Hey fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Welcome to this Australian Open semi-final predictions. There are some surprising contenders in this semi-final, especially on the women's side, but perhaps you did not see Alexander Zverev's performance today as I'm talking to you coming either. An amazing match from him. He was serving out of a tree. I just wanted to start with that because that's the most fresh memory I have from today's tennis action. And I was very impressed by Zverev, how he held his composure. Despite losing the third set, he was, serving for the match. 5-3, and Alcaraz broke back. So yeah, well done to Alcaraz as well, because he did struggle in this match. He started very poorly, 6-1's first set. I mean, we've seen that before from him in Grand Slams. He did that against Djokovic in the Wimbledon final. Everybody got a bit worried that it's going to be a blowout, but then he came back and he actually won that match. So it was on the cards for quite a while that Alcaraz might fight back. But Zverev held his nerve and held his serve. Most of all, he was serving very, very high first serve percentage. And if he keeps doing that, he can win the tournament. Because when he's serving like that, he's also playing really well from the baseline and not making any really unforced errors, at least not many. While Alcaraz in this match was all over the place with his shot making. I think when someone is serving in that way against you, you get a bit stressed. You need to do something when you're in the ball, in the rally. You need to kind of come up with something, take advantage, and go for something you feel stressed. And that's my reading of what was happening to Alcaraz, that he was trying too much. And he has these days when he can play a little bit erratically. And he did for the first 2.5 sets, perhaps, but he did not have any really easy service games compared to Zverev. Zverev just kept hammering the pressure. There was a pretty key moment, I would say, in the fourth set where Alcaraz was close to getting a break point. It was juice, long rally, 5-5, and Zverev played an amazing few points there, managed to hold serve, and then he broke Alcaraz in the next game. So rough one for Carlitos. We all want to see him do well. I think he's a great ambassador for tennis, and I love his game. But I'm very impressed by Zverev, who's now back to the form he was in when he got injured with that ankle rolling that happened against Nadal in the French Open 2022. But before we get into the Zverev-Medvedev match, I think we should start in order. We start with Sinner-Djokovic. We're going to get into the women's as well. Of course, Sinner versus Djokovic, the blockbuster semifinal we've all been hoping for. They did play, obviously, at the Davis Cup. Sinner won that time, head-to-head 4-2 to Djokovic. Their matches are always very entertaining. Sinner has raised his game, I would say. End of last year, he really showed a big improvement, especially on serve, I think. Seems more solid, more mentally stable. Djokovic is Djokovic, the greatest tennis player of all time, almost impossible to beat, especially when he's in his certain moods. And but he has struggled a little bit from time to time in this tournament. Wasn't super spectacular against Fritz, but he can win anyway. That's the thing with Djokovic. He can win when he's on 70%, it seems like, at least. And that's the worry for Sinner. However, if there's one player that's going to beat Djokovic in this draw, perhaps except Alcaraz, it is Jannik Sinner. And I think he has a chance here. The odds are in Djokovic's favor, but it's pretty slight. And I think Sinner has a real chance. I'm keen to hear what you think. However, I did predict Djokovic to win the tournament. I'm going to stick to that prediction. To beat him is the Everest of tennis, the Mount Everest of tennis. It is almost like an impossible feat. And I think in a 5-set match, he will find a way to raise his game. Whether he has an infection in the body or not, I don't know. There was some talk about that. He did look a little bit so-so. His team looks slightly worried, but when it's Djokovic, he can look like he's, limping around, and then he wins anyway. So I'm going to say 3-1 Djokovic. 4 tough sets, but 3-1 Djokovic is my prediction. Keen to hear your predictions, odds and stuff on tennisnerd.net. But it would be very fun if this match goes 5 sets, becomes this titanic battle, and the match we remember from the men's tournament in the Australian Open 2024. I also want to give a shout out to Nick Kyrgios because his commentating is excellent. I must say that, like, he can be on and off on the tennis court, but I think he's very much on as a commentator. I think he's been giving a lot of good insight. He knows these players. He's played against these players. He's recently played on the tour. I mean, he's still on the tour, but it was a while since we saw him. And he gives that insight, and that's great. I think this is what we need. These older guys, they do well as well, but having a fresh player who's actively playing and have faced these guys, it's so much more valuable. And Nick is a pretty engaging commentator and talker as well. So well done to him. I just want to give him some shout out here, and that he's doing a great job. All right, so then we have Medvedev versus Zverev. And this is a match with a huge head-to-head. They've played so many times, 11-7, not 7-11, to Medvedev in this case. And last year they played 6 times. Medvedev won 5 of those times. So that gives you an indication of kind of mentally where this head-to-head is in one way. But then if Zverev is playing like this, who is going to beat him? If he's serving like he's doing, like with his high 70s, 80% first serves, how do you beat this guy? Even from the baseline against Alcaraz, he looked almost impenetrable. He looked very difficult to beat, to get out of position, super solid. While on the other hand, Medvedev has not looked so great. I mean, he got through Hurkacz, 5 sets as predicted, so we will take that. He has not really impressed in the way that he can impress. So very, very even match, most likely 5 sets. But I'm feeling Zverev here. It's a little bit against the bookies. The bookies think Medvedev obviously has the head-to-head, has the higher ranking, but the way Zverev played against Alcaraz was a sign of impressive form. And I think he can keep it up. And then he will win in 5 sets. That is my prediction against Medvedev. And then, according to my predictions, we have a Djokovic Zverev final, but it could also be a Medvedev Sinner final. That's how hard fought these matches are. If we have Sinner Djokovic on the men's side, that is kind of that final, the way I see it. Then we also have another final in the semifinals of the women's tournament, and that is Sabalenka versus Gauff. Also an interesting head-to-head. Gauff has 4-2. But she did play some pretty atrocious tennis at times in the quarterfinals. She's also one of those players, a bit similar to Djokovic in this case, that finds a way to win even when she's not playing well and not feeling it. And that's a very, very impressive skill. Being the opposite myself, I'm really impressed by these ultra competitors. It's going to be tough for Sabalenka in one way mentally there, because Gauff did also win their last match. And Gauff has 4-2 head-to-head, did win the US Open final, if you remember. On the other hand, Sabalenka has been hitting the felt off the ball. She has been playing so well. She has not looked threatened once. The ball just comes to her like perfectly every single time, and she just bashes it. Ultra impressive. One of the best tennis performances so far I've seen on the women's side. The way Gauff played in the quarterfinals against Kostyuk is not enough. Like, that's no way that level is enough, even if she's fighting hard and try to win ugly, as her coach Brad Gilbert would say. I don't think there's a chance then if Sabalenka is playing that kind of tennis. The thing that can happen is that Sabalenka gets a bit nervous. Some double fault starts creeping in, some tension, some nerves, and then things can change. And you know that that's against some opponents, despite just, really bageling and breadsticking other players, she gets into that situation where the nerves start playing a part. But on the other hand, she won here last year, and looks like she's feeling great on these courts. So I'm going to go Sabalenka 2-1. She is the slight favorite, and I'm going to maintain her as such. And then the last, and probably the least expected semifinal. That's Zheng from China versus Yastremska from Ukraine. And both of these players, they're on new territory here. They're going to be nervous. It's going to be interesting to see how they tackle this type of situation, being in a Grand Slam semifinal and also facing a player that's also new to the situation. And that makes a more interesting scenario, in my opinion, because it's going to be, they both will feel, okay, this is my match to win, which might put extra pressure instead of just playing against someone that you are an underdog. You just need to show up, play your best tennis, and then we see what happens. But in this case, they can start a feeling like, okay, this is my chance of reaching a Grand Slam final. I need to take it. I have a feeling that Zheng will deal with this situation a bit better. Yastremska is a great fighter. She has really played good tennis this tournament. But I would say that Zheng seems a bit more solid overall in her tennis, and her seeding is saying that also her recent results are better. I just feel like it's a pretty reliable prediction to go Zheng here, but might go 3 sets. I would say Zheng 2-1. Yastremska can fight, can play, but I just think overall Zheng is the better tennis player in this matchup. They have never played before, so we have nothing to work on in terms of head-to-head data or something like that. but that's just what I've seen and what I've felt and what I've looked at in terms of stats and results over the tournament and also last year. So that's it. Those are the predictions. According to my predictions, there will be a final between Djokovic and Zverev on the men's side and Sabalenka and Zheng on the women's side. We will see. I might be completely wrong, as it can be the case quite often, especially on the women's side in this tournament. But it will be fascinating to follow. I'm also keen to hear your predictions in the comments below. We're nearing the end here. There will be more videos about rackets coming tomorrow. So please subscribe and check out tennisnerd.net for more articles like this and more content around racket, strings, and tennis in general. That's it. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.